Hello, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast. Powered by Motors and Cazoo, with Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters from across the franchised and independent dealer sectors.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio. We've got plenty of headlines and a special guest, and lots to talk about this week, Phil.
We have, yeah. It's been again, bearing in mind we short week last week with the Easter, but this week is full on, and we're going to keep away from the geopolitical climate, aren't we, and focus on what's happening here in the UK, but there's enough.
I think that's probably a good call, because between recording this and us going out Saturday morning, the world would have moved on.
Yeah. We becoming the Pope and Jesus and whatever else in this mad world we find ourselves in. But we have got a couple of shout outs this week, and the first one is if you've not checked your podcast feed for Wednesday of this week, we had a special interview with Graeme Potts earlier in the week. I think it might have been Tuesday, actually. It took us a while, and it was great to have Graeme on one. He's a good friend of us over the years. I think you've known him quite a while, haven't you?
Yeah, I knew him back probably in his Inchcape days. I mean, he's got a fascinating backstory, which we did cover in the interview, because he was managing director of the RAC, and then he was managing director of Inchcape before launching Eden Motor Group, which was back in 2008, which was certainly a story I covered very closely when I was editing Motor Trader. And we describe him as an industry legend, but he really is, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, I say, if you've not listened to the full interview, we will be playing a snippet of the interview with Graeme at the halfway point on today's podcast. But if you do have a full listen to the full interview there with Graeme, as Curtis, introduces Graeme and goes through Graeme's background, that kind of gives you an inkling of his career and why he's such a legend in the automotive sector.
Yeah, and a fascinating snapshot of Eden Motor Group, past, present, and future. So do check out the full interview, and as Phil says, we'll have an extract after the midway break.
And the other shout out is probably not necessarily for myself, but I think we mentioned it last week. I was on the first Asta Media webinar alongside Lee Swinard from Interpath, and this was a bit of a chat generally, and it was about an hour. We sort of kept the slides down to about 5 or 10 minutes, because these days nobody wants to sit and look at slides for an hour, do they, Curtis? They want the conversation, they want the questions and answers more than anything else. So it was good. It was a good hour. We really filled the hour. The minute you start getting into that Chinese new entrance and EV market, the time just goes, doesn't it? So much to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's such a topical subject. And in fact, this week, we've got another new Chinese brand, which we probably didn't know about when we did the webinar.
Well, yeah. I mean, these days, you can't really mention them all, can you? There's so many of them. But no, at some point, we'll probably get a recording to share of that webinar for those that didn't register and join. But no, it was a good chat, a good conversation with Lee, talking around, when we did mention the Middle East conflict, but we did touch on that subject a little bit. But it was a really good conversation.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo. If you're a supplier and would like us to profile your business and reach our audience of dealer group bosses, managers and decision makers on one of our supplier special episodes, then get in touch with Curtis and Philip at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
And companies already featured in our supplier specials include Autoglim Lifeshine, Impel, Prospecting Dynamics, ETT, Generational, MTC, Jigcar, and CheckFic. And you can find them all in your podcast feed, along with our recent OEM specials with new entry brands Verizon, Ion, and Shangan. So if you'd like us to profile your business, then just message us at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
You're listening to All the Chatter That Matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo.
Well, as we said at the beginning of the show, there's plenty to get through this week. Lots of headlines, starting with Cargiant, one of the UK's biggest and most successful used car supermarket sites, announces it will close by the end of April, citing adverse market conditions. Mitsubishi is back in business in the UK, with several former dealer partners joining its new sales network. Meanwhile, another new Chinese brand, which, like Mitsubishi, is being distributed here by International Motors, is set to launch in the UK, with Foton looking for dealers and selling its range of LCVs here from this year. And in the second half of this week's pod, we'll have the latest performance figures and financials from Big Motoring World, which has posted record Q1 unit sales, and Norton Way, which has posted full-year drops in both turnover and profits. And we'll finish with the relatively humble sales target for Rolls-Royce's two-seater Nightingale EV, a model which the brand itself describes as hedonistic and extravagant. Can't wait to see that in their marketing.
You're listening to All the Chatter That Matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo.
Yeah, certainly looking forward to the Rolls-Royce story at the end there. But let's kick off with the first story. And as Curtis said there, with Car Dealer magazine, with used car supermarket Cargiant will close on the 24th of April. So not long, that's next week. And employees are facing redundancy. Have been told Cargiant will close in less than 2 weeks. That was when they covered the story initially. Used car supermarket has been consulting with staff on the future of the business. No viable options to keep the business running have been found. Staff are told. Cargiant confirmed it will close its retail operations in the, as they commented in Car Dealer. So, I mean, this is a big business down there within the M25 and do some significant volume of used cars, don't they?
It's massive. It really is a massive site. So it covers 50 acres in West London. And it was actually founded back in 1976. So, it's just coming up for its 50th anniversary. And certainly, in terms of used car supermarkets in the UK, it was very much the benchmark. And over the years, and going back to my Motor Trader days, it was a serial winner of best used car supermarket awards for many years. And this hasn't come as a big surprise, because Car Dealer's been tracking this story very, very closely. And what they published during the week was the announcement from Cargiant, which actually says that this decision follows an extensive consultation process with our team, during which we carefully explored all potential options to secure a viable future for the business. And it goes on to say that, unfortunately, despite those efforts, we've concluded that the business is no longer commercially sustainable in its current form. This reflects a combination of factors, including a continued reduction in the supply of used vehicles, primarily driven by the EV mandate, alongside rising operating costs and increasing complexity within the used car market. So it's being quite clear there, isn't it, in terms of the reasons behind the closure?
Yeah, and they've been operating for nearly more than 50 years. in that sort of used car supermarket sector. So, this is not a new kid on the block sort of scenario. This is a well-established business down there in the M25. Now, we do know that they do own a lot of land and property, don't they, around their area, because it does go on, obviously, to say that the firm is obviously based on a sprawling, near 50-acre site located in Park Royal Old Oak Common in West London. It is directly beside a planned HS2 interchange, which will connect HS2, the Elizabeth line, overland, and other transport links. And that the value of the land, as yelled in the company accounts over previous years, but it's latest set at 98.8 million has been placed as a valuation on the site there. So, yeah, waiting to see what happens with this one, aren't we?
Yeah, very much so, and there's possibly more to come out. So we'll track the headlines over the coming week or so as it prepares to close. But this looks pretty final now. So as you say, it's really sad to see it go, because it was very much the benchmark site for many years, and a big operator. I think in this piece it says that over its 50 years, the site, because it only operates from this one mega site, it has sold over 1 million used cars. So that's pretty phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah, they're doing, I think it's 360,000 units a year. So it's, bearing in mind that's sales and deliveries on a day-to-day basis putting through that business. So it's a huge operation. But we're going to talk about IM Motors for the next two stories, and first one in Motor Trade News, which is Mitsubishi Motors appoints UK dealers ahead of model releases. Now, we touched on this, didn't we, previously, when they first indicated they were returning to the UK market, but this is now that they have got dealers set up, both previous existing dealers and new dealers, as part of their return to the UK launch.
Yeah, the exit from the UK didn't really last that long, did it? And of all the brands launching in the UK, this was a bit of a surprise when we first covered the story a couple of months ago. But we're starting to hear more and more about what their plans are. And so in this particular story, it confirms that Mitsubishi Motors already has 105 operational after-sales sites across the UK. So it's made that re-entry into the UK a little easier, in that it already had these established relationships with many of its former dealer partners. But it's also confirmed that it's got 33 sales sites in its first wave, with a second wave of appointments expected soon. So the brand said that this means that it's on course to meet its target of 60 sales outlets by the time the vehicles arrive in showrooms this year.
Yeah, and as you say, they're expecting the showrooms from May of this year, and they're saying that the first wave of sales dealers to be appointed include several long-standing Mitsubishi dealers. Yeah, really sort of citing that some of these names are returning to that Mitsubishi brand and ready to go. So it would be interesting to see how quickly they get back up that sales channel, won't it, in terms of volume?
Yeah, most definitely. And Sharon Townsend, who's heading up Mitsubishi Motors in the UK, in this story is quoted as saying, "We are pleased to welcome back so many familiar dealers as authorised sales points. The experience, enthusiasm and knowledge they bring to the network and our customers are vitally important, and it will be wonderful to see new Mitsubishi vehicles back in their dealerships." So it's going to be a busy couple of months now for the Mitsubishi franchise, isn't it?
It is another one to add to the
Yes.
ever-increasing list. And
Speaking of which,
exactly. So motortrader.com, and forgive us if we've got the pronunciation incorrect on this, but International Motors to distribute Foton range of LCVs, which is bringing in another Chinese manufacturer into the UK, but in the light commercial vehicle market.
Yeah, and as you say, distributed by International Motors. So as well as Mitsubishi, they distribute Isuzu, Subaru, and more recently Xpeng, GWM, Great Wall Motors, and a big player in the UK market in terms of distribution for OEMs. And this particular launch, I must admit, I'd never heard of Foton or Futon.
We'll find out at some stage.
Yeah, we will. But it's fairly sort of well established in China because it was founded 30 years ago. It's headquartered in Beijing, and as you say, it's a specialist maker of light commercial vehicles. And again, like Mitsubishi, the launch within the UK is fairly imminent because it's all going to happen this year.
Yeah, so like you say, moving very, very quickly there. And there's a statement here saying that they are thrilled to bring their innovative and exciting light commercial vehicle range to the UK market, a pivotal and important market in Europe, and look forward to showcasing products to customers. Partnering with International Motors is a vital part of their entry to the market, and they're proud to have formed the partnership in the UK there. So yeah, as you say, they're 30 years founded. They were founded 30 years ago, and their headquarters are based in Beijing over there in China. So like I say, we'll see this. And just finally on this one, Foton electric truck, van and bus products are already established in Europe markets such as Italy, Germany, and Malta. So it's obviously not a new manufacturer to the European market in those marketplaces.
We'll be back with an extract from our interview with Eden Motor Group founder Graeme Potts and the rest of the week's headlines after the break.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on Motor Trade Radio, powered by Motors and Cazoo. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media.
Now, Graeme, turning to new car sales, we've seen the SMMT figures for March, which showed a 6.6% rise in new car registrations. How was the March 26 plate change for Eden? And how would you describe new car retail demand across your franchises over the course of the month?
Okay, well, first things first, March was good for us, for new cars particularly so. Partly because with one or two of our brands, we did have a forward order situation with deliveries accelerating in March, so that was very, very gratifying. And we have, in the last 18 months, developed into offering a leasing and contract hire platform, which has grown and clearly contributed to the overall volume of new cars that we did in March. However, I don't think that the headlines really adequately describe what the market is like. And there are a number of tectonic plates.
Yeah.
Frankly, retail demand is not as strong as it should be. And I don't want to be negative. We will never be negative in the marketplace. But the volume that's being delivered is being encouraged into the marketplace with very competitive offers. And of course, there's a switching of channels, with the Motability channel with most brands being a little bit weaker than was the case, partly because of statutory and governmental action, and I think partly because of affordability on the part of manufacturers. And so the overall result isn't bad at all. There still needs to be more going through the pure retail channel.
And Graeme, looking further ahead, how do you think Q2 will pan out for both Eden and the sector in terms of new and used car sales and demand?
Yeah, well, I'm encouraged that demand has not fallen off to any material degree with the very, very unhappy situation in the Middle East. There are 2 or 3 wars going on in the world at the moment, and I think our economy is probably having a little bit more of a drag on consumer demand than confidence in peace and power costs. Um, so that's quite encouraging. However, I've got to say that getting this channel shift that strengthens retail, again, I don't want to be negative, but as we're probably all aware, last year's retail share of new cars was at an all-time low. And as retailers, we want private customers to be confident, seeing good value and coming into the marketplace in increasing numbers. We are benefiting from a substantial forward order base with one or two of our brands, where particularly popular and affordable cars are in high demand. It's a very clear pattern that when the cars are rated to be good and very affordable and are strongly promoted, the demand seems to be there. I think that the marketing costs and the support costs for both retailer and manufacturer are quite high, but the result is it's recovering volume, and that's got to be a good thing. In terms of used cars, there's still a shortage of proper used cars. Like many in the industry, I kind of have got a background of many, many years of developing skill and enthusiasm for used cars. And 2 to 5 year old motor cars are still in short supply. Consequently, is it a good thing that wholesale and retail prices are holding up very strongly? But there isn't enough of the cars. Hence the strong emphasis on new. I think for Q2, we'll probably hit our new car target because we've got the benefits that I've just outlined, and we are struggling to get enough good quality used cars, and so I think we might fall a little bit short in the volume of used cars, to be honest.
Well, some great insight there from Graeme on both March, how Q1 went, and his thoughts on Q2, and a little bit of interference there on the line as well towards the end.
Yeah, unfortunately we did, I think, but it was we wanted to make sure we grabbed time with Graeme, and if you do get to listen to and you should do. The full interview there, he's a busy person. He doesn't like not to be busy. He's involved with quite a few things, whether it's the, his new position supporting the Ben, or his new role at the IMI, and obviously running an ever expanding and, well-run motor retail business. So, yeah, we got that bit of interference, but we didn't want to stop Graeme in the flow, so I do apologise for that. But the full interview, you won't be disappointed. I can tell you that.
Yeah, most definitely, because he does actually talk in some detail about how the group went from this soulless Vauxhall group to a true multi-franchise group, because they now represent Hyundai, Mazda, Peugeot, MG, as well as newcomers Leap Motor and Skywell. And he had some really interesting things to say about both Leap Motor and Skywell, and this new experience of representing them.
He does, and if he's anything, he always answers the questions and very pragmatic and open on his view. So do listen to that on your podcast feed from earlier on in the week. And we'll get back to the headlines now. And as Curtis said, a couple of financial updates from the market. The first one is with Car Dealer, and they've been obviously following everything going on at Big Motoring World in the recent months and weeks and years, I don't know. But Big Motoring World reveals record sales in Q1 as firm looks to move on from Waddle saga. And this is that Big Motoring World enjoys sales boom in opening months of the year. Firm sold 18,300 used cars across the 10 sites in the first 3 months of this year, 2026. Single month records were broken in January, February, and in March. So, great results and great performance from Big Motoring World on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, the context is, the backdrop to this is the the court case that Peter Woodall, the founder of Big Motoring World, is currently suing the bosses of Big Motoring World for unfair dismissal, and that's still playing out in court, and we will have an update on that once that's been resolved. But going back to the story, it's really about Q1 and follows on neatly from what Graeme Potts was saying about retail demand in Q1 and March, because in a statement that Big Motoring World issued last week, the firm said it had sold over 18,300 used cars across its 10 sites over the course of those 3 months, and that result is up 25% on the previous year, and actually represents the group's best ever Q1 by unit sales. So there's no financials in this. This is purely about unit sales.
So yeah, further on in the story, that it does go on a little bit around obviously the court case, but Lawrence Vaughan did say about the Q1 figures, who's the CEO there at Big Motoring World, that saying that these outstanding results reflect the huge efforts made by people at all levels in their organisations to transform how the business operates, from increased efficiency in vehicle preparation to the delivery and improved customer journey. Every element of Big Motoring World is being enhanced to maximise outputs and results, and that they are determined to carry this momentum through the rest of 2026 to benefit their customers and the national team. So very positive words there from Lawrence on that Q1 performance and what's happening within Big Motoring World itself.
And moving on to the next story, which is also from Car Dealer. Headline there is losses more than double to 5.7 million at car dealership group Norton Way. So this reports on how losses have deepened at Norton Way last year. And this is actually for the financial year ending March 31st, 2025. So these figures are actually sort of getting on a bit now, but they're the most recent year ends, and this is what Car Dealer is reporting on. And they found that the losses had more than doubled to 2.1 million, and turnover in the 12-month period also fell by 13.7% to £353,000, with operating loss was £4 million, up from £114,000 in the previous year.
Yeah, and say there's quite a bit of detail in the figures, and there's a comment to say that a strategic review across the group during the year led to 2 site closures. As a result, new car sales volume fell during the year by 9.8%. Used car volume also reduced across prior years with a decrease of 14.1%, and overall retail sales turnover decreased by 20.9 million. That's a fall of 10.9% as a result in the reduction in vehicle volume, and corporate sales volume did increase by 23% on prior year, but due to the change in sales mix, turnover fell by 16.3%. So again, quite a bit of detail on this, but as Curtis said there, we must stress this is for the year ending March the 31st, 2025. So that's a year old now on these performance figures from Norton Way.
Yeah, and significantly within the story, there's some comments that Car Dealer report on, saying the group blamed challenging market conditions for the worsening in its financial results, and also talked about the ZEV mandate and the impact its manufacturer partners are having on sales. And this is actually quite interesting, because it goes on to say that, and this is a direct quote, the supply of vehicles by each manufacturer also had a major influence on the profitability of each dealership, oversupply generally leading to a reduction in margins, and undersupply, leading to improved margins. So within that, it also cited the introduction of the ZEV mandate in January 2024 as contributing to some of the issues it faced over that financial year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see when we do get the next financial period on that turnaround without those external influences on the business. But we're heading over to the final story, and first part of it is in the Financial Times that we picked the story up from, and then it was covered in other medias and the BBC as well. But this is that Rolls-Royce targets 100 ultra wealthy buyers with customised electric cars. Now, this got a lot of conversation across the sector. This is that Rolls-Royce is creating a custom-built two-seater electric vehicle with bespoke interiors and bodywork exclusively for 100 ultra-wealthy collectors as the UK carmaker tests the limits of the market for personalised cars. I think this is a personalised car to another level, this one, Curtis. Have you had the phone call yet?
Not yet, no, and it is strictly by invitation, so I'm not expecting a call anytime soon. It's the FT, the report in the FT is really good, and it's very, very detailed, and really does shed a light on Rolls-Royce's thinking for this particular car. As you say, it's a two-seater EV, and Rolls-Royce's approach differs from some of its competitors by offering this entirely bespoke new car designed with pre-agreed clients in a 4-year process. So this whole process actually started 4 years ago with them inviting customers, and rather than personalizing existing models. So this is really the point of differentiation. And the 100 vehicles as I say, are available by invitation only, and none of the design will be repeated. And the company said in one of the comments that went with this piece is, we wanted to create something which was hedonistic, extraordinary, extravagant, and of course, extremely rare. And that was actually Chris Brownridge, who's chief exec of Rolls-Royce Motor Cars. And I think that's exactly what they've delivered, Phil.
Yeah, but without the big splash of a TV campaign. But we won't go there on the GLR one.
Do you want to know ballpark price figures for this?
Oh, yeah.
The price range is expected to be anywhere between, and it's quite a wide ballpark, this. So anywhere between £4.5 million and £25 million. So you can you pays your money, takes your choice, and pay whatever you like, really.
Yeah, it really is going after that ultra, as it says, ultra wealthy, bespoke marketplace. And let's see who's on that list, and I'm sure at some point it'll be leaked to who's on it. But Chris Brownridge does go on to say that Project Nightingale is the most extravagant expression of what Rolls-Royce is capable of today. While the company does not publicly disclose the price of its cars, its Project Nightingale would sit between private commission and coach build products. Very, very interesting way of doing it and entering that marketplace.
Yes.
Fairly unique on this one. So that's it for this week. As always, you'll get a list of the headlines on Monday morning's newsletter that's available through the LinkedIn. Through sort of Curtis and myself, we'll share that anyway. And if you already subscribed, you'll get it through your email. If you haven't, then please do look out for it and subscribe, and you'll get all the headlines every Monday morning with links to the podcast as well on your feed. But do, as I say, do check out the full interview. I think it's 35 minutes with Graeme. Great interview, very open, very honest. It gives you a good sort of view of the market today, and his views on new entrants as he talks about obviously Leap Motors alongside his Vauxhall businesses and Skywell now as part of his one of his used car locations as well. So do check out the full interview there with Graeme Potts from earlier on in the week.
But that's all for now. So many thanks to you for listening to this Motor Trade Radio podcast. Until next time, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you for listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors and Cazoo. We'll be sharing all the URLs from this week's headlines in our newsletter on Monday morning. To subscribe, just search LinkedIn for the Motor Trade Radio podcast.